What's up, guys? We are back at home base here, ready to talk about the two nights of action that happened at Lakeside Speedway for Shane Stewart's Heartland of America Showdown with Kubota Highland Racing. So this first board, we're talking about night number one, which was on Friday night. And there was 39 cars that showed up for night number one. We did lose a couple to Knoxville Raceway on Saturday night. We kind of knew that going in that we were going to lose a couple of cars, but still a really good field for both nights of action over there at Lakeside Speedway. And before this video even gets going, I just want to mention that I believe Lakeside Speedway is one of it's in the top 5 for best racing big tracks in the country. I might go as far as to say it is top 3 best racing big race tracks in the entire country. Those guys have the track prep figured out there, and it was a lot of fun to watch these guys go back and forth all weekend long on Friday and on Saturday. So let's get right into it. So qualifying, there was 2 flights of qualifying. Tyler Courtney ended up being the fastest driver overall at 14.738 seconds. He also came in as the points leader with Kubota Highland Racing, and that is not the case anymore at the end of the week, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. So he was quickest overall. Chris Windham was second. Sam Hafertepe Jr. was third. Austin McCarl was fourth, and Caleb Johnson ended up in the 5th position. Quite an interesting back half of the top 5 there in Flight A. Flight B was Casey Kane, quickest overall. Brent Marks, Joe B. Miller, Brad Sweet, and James McFadden would be your top 5 in Flight B. Going on to the heat races, heat race number 1 was won by Caleb Johnson in just his second start of the year behind the wheel of a sprint car. His first 410 start of the season as well. He would get the win from the outside of the front row and go to the dash. Sam Hafertepe Jr. ended up in second. Tyler Courtney was third. Tanner Thorson was fourth. And Corey Day would come from outside of a transfer to inside of a transfer, 7th to 5th for Corey Day. Heat race number 2, Austin McCarl would get the win. He would go to the dash along with the second place finisher of Parker Price Miller. So Chris Windham, he was the fastest qualifier in that heat race, but would not transfer through the heat race. And so it would go to the second place finisher, that being PPM. Rico Aber was third. Zeb Wise was fourth. And after a crazy battle with Chris Windham, Brian Brown would come out with that final transfer spot on the last lap. Heat race number 3, that one was won surprisingly by Joe B. Miller. He got the win in that one. New engine under the hood for the 51B, and he was strong all weekend long. James McFadden was second. Casey Kane was third. He would go to the dash with Joe B. Miller. Hunter Schoenberg debuting that new team with Hyde Breeder Motorsports, and then Paul Nienheiser, his first night out in the Beaver Drill and Tool 12X, would transfer straight in through the heat race as well. Heat race number 4 was won by Brad Sweet. Kyle Larson drove from 6th up to 2nd. Jacob Allen was 3rd, Justin Peck 4th, and Brent Marks would join Brad Sweet in the dash. Then in the dash, it was Austin McCarl getting the win. Parker Price Miller was 2nd. Tyler Courtney drove from 7th up to 3rd in that dash. Caleb Johnson, Brad Sweet, Casey Kane, Brent Marks, and then Joe B. Miller would be the finishing field there in the dash. That's how they would line up for the feature. Then in the B main, Chris Windham would get the win, just barely though, over a hard-charging Carter Sarf, just his second night behind the wheel of that Chase Briscoe Racing 5B car. He got a win the weekend prior at Red Hill Raceway with the MOA Sprint cars, and he was super impressive all weekend long. Makes it in through the B main here with a 2nd place finish. Spencer Baston was 3rd, and Ryan Timms would grab the last transfer spot. But the guy that finished 5th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., his first time to Lakeside Speedway, he was coming on strong there at the end of that B main, and I thought with maybe 2 more laps or so, he would get by Ryan Timms, but that was not the case. He would miss out on the show along with Jake Buback, Corey Eliason, Blake Hahn, Brenham Crouch, and John Carney. So there was another, it was Eliason and Crouch, the 2 full-time high rollers that would not make the show. Crouch would use his final provisional of the season, while Eliason chose to use it later on, did not use a provisional to start this feature on Friday night. Then going into the main event, it was Brad Sweet getting the win, but it was not like he walked the dog on him, guys. I mean, it was an absolutely hellacious battle at the very beginning. Austin McCarl, as you can see here, led the first 5 laps of this feature from the pole. He would then get passed by Tyler Courtney on lap number 6. Courtney would lead a handful of laps before getting passed by Brad Sweet, and then he would pass him back, take the lead for a few more laps before Brad Sweet finally was able to, lock it down and lead the final 11 laps of this race and get the win for $10,000. So Brad Sweet would get the win from the 5th position. Tyler Courtney finished up in 2nd. I've got a pink dot next to Kyle Larson. He drove from 12th to 3rd. and it looked like the Kyle Larson of yesteryear, right? I mean, he has not been very good all year long. Let's be completely honest. He got that first win at East Bay and really has not been a factor for the rest of these high limit races, but he looked extremely good all weekend long at Lakeside. He went 12th to 3rd, and with a couple more laps, he was probably, or maybe a yellow, he could have challenged for this win on Friday night. Brent Marks, a pink dot next to him. His strong start to the season continues. Him and Brad Sweet, the only two guys so far that have been inside the top 10 for every single high limit race so far in 2024. Has yet to score a victory yet, but he's still right there inside the top 5, inside the top 10 every single night. We know a win is coming here very soon for Brent Marks. Got a pink dot next to Austin McCarl. It was a strong showing for him. Led 5 laps, won the dash, and he would not actually return for Saturday due to sponsor commitments. He had to go run Knoxville Raceway. He is running for the points championship over there, so he would not return on Saturday for the $50,000 to win. He was really contemplating whether he should come back or not because, he was strong on the first night, and then last year during this race, he was actually right up there battling for the lead. Austin McCarl, very good at Lakeside, but he was not able to make it back for Saturday. PPM would drop to 6th after starting in 2nd. A good run for Sam Hafer-Teef Jr. up there in the 7th position. A run that team really needed against a big touring series like High Limit Racing. Spencer Baston, his night started off tough. He started back in 23rd after coming through the B main, but he would get the hard charger and drive all the way to the 8th position. It was a phenomenal night for Spencer Baston in the main event. That team continues to struggle with consistency at the very beginning of the night. Getting qualified and getting through the heat race has been a problem. When it comes to the feature, they are much better, but they still have to work on that very beginning of the night issue there for the number 5 car. Rico Eber was 9th. Casey Kane, I got a pink dot next to him. At one point in time during this race, Casey Kane was on the podium. On one restart, he drove by like 4 cars around the outside and was into 3rd and then fall back late and ended up in 10th, but did show some pretty good speed there throughout that race. So Casey Kane might be moving up the power rankings here this week. Also, Joe B. Miller, a great run for him. I put him with a pink dot there. He finished 11th. New Kistler under the hood for Joe B. Miller. He got a heat race win, was in the dash, and in a solid 11th place run. We talk about how hard it is to run top 10 against high limit. There's just so many good cars. Joe B. Miller almost did that. 11th place run. That team's got to be pretty happy with that result. Also, Jacob Allen, he finished in 12th. Corey Day, a 13th place result. We have been talking about it here on the channel, and the big tracks are definitely where Corey Day and that team seem to struggle right now. Coming from California, there's just not very many big tracks that you get to run like the size of Lakeside. Calistoga, not around anymore. Paris Auto Speedway, yes, that's a half mile, but they only run wing cars once every 2 years or so. And so Corey Day does not have that much big track experience, and it is showing, but he does get better on the Saturday finale, which we will talk about here in just a moment. Brian Brown, 14th. Justin Peck with a 15th place run. I cannot figure this team out right now. One night they're top 5, the next night they're outside the top 15. I just don't really get it. They've got some work to do on that 13 car. Ryan Timms, Tanner Thorson, and kind of the same situation as Peck for Zeb Wise. He finishes in 18th in this one. Really a non-factor all night, and Saturday didn't really go as well for him either. He was in the B main on Saturday as well. So the 13 and the 26 guys, they have some work to do if they want to be contending for top 5s on a nightly basis with High Limit Racing. 19th was James McFadden. He got into an incident and spun around and was looking the wrong direction in the middle of that feature event. Chris Wyndham was 20th. Brennan Crouch, 21st. And then I got 3 pink dots for Paul Nienheiser, Carter Sarf, and Caleb Johnson. Nienheiser, first night out in that Beaver Racing 12X car, made it in through the heat race. He looked solid. I think had an issue, had to pull off the racetrack early in that one, but still cool to see him make the show first night out in that car. And then Carter Sarf, we mentioned it earlier. He's only been behind the wheel of a 410 sprint car with a wing on top. I think that was his 3rd race ever, and he made the show through the B main. I think this kid really is something special. Does not have a ton of experience with the wings on top. Very, very good in the midget. But I think Chase Briscoe and that team have found a driver that can really, really contend with these guys if he gets some more seat time. And that is the plan for him this year, to run quite a bit of 410 stuff with that team. Also wanted to give a shout out to Caleb Johnson. He had some issues. I think something was broken in the feature or something. He started 4th, won a heat race, and was looking solid early in the race, and then he went a lap down. It just looked like that car was plowing tight, like there was something broken on it. I think he ended up pulling in later in the race, but I wanted to give him a shout out because he was super fast, and it was cool to see a guy like that get some TV time on Flow Racing. Hunter Schoenberg, debuting his new team, would end up in the 25th spot. He had an issue and had to pull off the racetrack as well. So Brad Sweet, we get the win, $10,000 going his way. And those top 4 guys, Sweet, Courtney, Larson, and Marks, they would be locked into the heat races for the second portion of the Heartland of America Showdown at Lakeside Speedway for $50,000 to win. So let's switch boards and let's talk about that race. Guys, I had the pen in my hand because I was going to write the score down for that race and I totally forgot. So let's put this race on the score out of 100. I thought it was a really good race. I mean, we're talking about a big racetrack, a 4/10 mile, basically a half mile. Lakeside's a big racetrack and sometimes it can be really hard to get cars to pass each other at places like that. But man, the whole night, the heat races were good. The feature was good as well. And I mean, you can't say it's a bad race when there's 3 different leaders and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different lead changes as well. So guys coming from 12th to 3rd, 23rd to 8th, good battle for the lead as well. This was a pretty darn good race for Lakeside Speedway, and I'm going to give it a pretty good score, I think. So let's go with 82. I'm going to go with an 82. You know, it's my cup of tea. I love short tracks. I love 3/8 miles, quarter miles, but Lakeside Speedway is quickly becoming one of my favorite racetracks on the schedule. So 82 out of 100. Now let's switch boards and talk about the big $50,000 finale from Lakeside Speedway. All right, we've got boards switched over and ready to talk about the big $50,000 to win race that happened last night on Saturday, May 4th. It was the biggest, the highest paying sprint car race of 2024 so far for Kubota Highland Racing and just for sprint car racing in general. So as I mentioned in the first part of this video, we did lose a couple of cars. We were still able to maintain a 35 car count there going into the finale. So pretty solid count considering all the different racing that was going on throughout the weekend. It was pretty good. Also, before I get into it, I think I'm going to try and change the way these videos are done, these recaps, especially once I get those magnets that I got made. If you look in the community tab on my channel, I ordered a bunch of magnets with the driver's numbers and things like that. And I think with those, I'm going to do the race recap videos different and make them a little bit shorter. Maybe not go into as far as the depth of qualifying and the heat races and stuff like that. Let me know down in the comments section below how you feel about that. All right, so qualifying Group A, remember the top 4 from the previous night did not have to qualify. So Brian Brown, quickest overall at 13:9:41. James McFadden was second. Casey Kane was third. Jacob Allen and Spencer Bass in the top 5 in Flight A. And in Flight B, it was Rico Abreu quickest over Corey Day, Corey Eliason, Justin Peck, and Ayrton Genitin. So that is your qualifying results for the first 5 cars. And then in the heat races, we had Brian Brown getting the win in heat race number 1. He would go to the dash along with Brad Sweet. Casey Kane would finish 3rd, Spencer Bass in 4th, and Ryan Timms would be the final transfer in heat 1. Heat race number 2 is James McFadden going to the dash. How about the run by Jake Buback in that heat race? If you were watching on Flow, Buback definitely impressed some people in that one. Kyle Larson was doing everything he could to try and get by the 27B, but he could not make it happen. Buback held his ground, and he was really impressive in that heat race and got a great interview with Tony Laporta in the infield. So Buback was second. Kyle Larson was third going to the dash. Jacob Allen was fourth, and then Blake Hahn was in the 5th position. Heat 3, Rico Abreu took the win from the pole. He would go to the dash. Corey Eliason was second. Tyler Courtney was third. He would go to the dash. And then Ayrton Genitin and Parker Price Miller rounded out the top 5 in that one going to the feature. Heat race number 4, it was Corey Day getting the win. He would go to the dash. Justin Peck was second. Brent Marks was third. He would go to the dash. Sam Hafertepe Jr. and then Chris Windham with a phenomenal battle between Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and himself for that last transfer spot. Windham just barely nipped him at the line and was able to grab that final spot to go to the feature. In the dash, Kyle Larson would get the win from the pole. Corey Day was second. Brent Marks was third. Brian Brown, James McFadden, Brad Sweet, Tyler Courtney, and Rico Abreu, the finishing order in the dash, as that's where they would start in the feature event. Then in the B main, Hunter Schoenberg would get the win from the 3rd starting spot. He got by Zeb Wise, who finished up in 2nd. Tanner Thorson drove from 6th to 3rd, and then Joe B. Miller grabbed the last transfer on the final corner, getting around Chris Martin for that 4th position. Missing out on the show was Martin, followed by Brenham Crouch, Caleb Johnson, Jason Martin, John Carney, and Carter Sarf in the 10th position. So then we get to the feature event, and this is where I'm talking about. I want to kind of switch things up with these recap videos and mostly just talk about the feature. Let me know again if down in the comments if you guys think that would be better. So in the feature, it started out with Corey Day leading this race, which is something that many of us going into the weekend we're not really expecting to see because we know that he struggles a little bit here on these bigger tracks. We watched in the last video or the last recap of Friday night. He finished like 13th, right? He was non-factor, was struggling. But tonight, he got in through the dash, had a great starting spot, and led the first 13 laps of this main event. and was slicing it up through lap traffic before finally giving the lead up to Kyle Larson, who led laps 14 through 17, and then Brad Sweet would get by him on lap number 18 and lead all the way through. But he was not, gone. I mean, Kyle Larson challenged him and passed him a couple times, but was not able to, lead at the line. So that's 2 nights in a row at Lakeside Speedway where we've had 3 different leaders in the race. And I mean, that's pretty darn good for a big racetrack like Lakeside. Like I said at the beginning, this is one of my favorite big racetracks in the country. It's definitely in the top 3. You think of like the tracks that actually race good that are big: Knoxville, Eldora, and in my opinion, Lakeside's the next best one. I mean, Port Royal actually is in there as well. So somewhere in the mix is Port Royal and Lakeside. So I'm a big fan of Lakeside after the last weekend that we were there. So Brad Sweet, he would drive from 6th to get the win and $50,000. He won the first night as well for $10,000, and he got a $10,000 bonus for having the most points from the 2 nights at Lakeside and the 1 night at Red Dirt Raceway, the 3 races that Shane Stewart promoted. So a $70,000 weekend for Brad Sweet. Kyle Larson, he was looking pretty solid. Did not win, obviously. His winless streak is up to 9 races, but he's definitely got the speed back in that car. And I don't think that winless streak is going to last much longer because he looked like the Kyle Larson that we, all know. Not the Kyle Larson that we saw there, the races 2 through 9 with high limit. He just looked like a non-factor, but he is back to normal, and he is back to being fast. James McFadden, he was 3rd, and he was pretty strong at the end of this race. I would have liked to seen what he could have done if the race would have stayed green, because through traffic, it looked like he had one of the best cars on the racetrack. But a solid podium for $10,000 for James McFadden. Corey Day would ultimately end up in 4th, which is the best run he's had on a track that's bigger than 3/8 of a mile so far this year. So maybe that team is making some strides on the bigger racetrack. So good to see Corey Day have a good run on a bigger racetrack. Justin Peck, I talked about him in the first video. He finishes 5th in this one. He was 15th the night before. This team is up, down, all around, left, right, backwards, and forwards. But that night, they drove from 12th up to 5th. They were very, very good. And hopefully this is the start of something for this team to get going in the right direction and start challenging for some of these victories. Brent Marks would finish 6th, then Rico Eber 7th, and then Tyler Courtney would finish in the 8th position, and he would lose the championship points lead from this run. And it's not like we're talking like he finished 20th, right? He finished 8th, but that is actually the worst finish he's had in like 7 or 8 races with high limit. He has been absolutely unbelievable. We hear drivers all the time talking about going on runs and, this guy will go on a run for a month or 2. This guy will go on a run for a month or 2. Well, Tyler Courtney went on a run for a really long time there, and he's still on a pretty darn good run. I mean, he hasn't been outside the top 10 in the high limit race since the first race at East Bay. But right now, Brad Sweet is the guy. He is hot right now. He's won the last 4 out of the 5 races. So he is on a really good run right now. And now Tyler Courtney is about, 18 points or 16 points behind in the championship. So he needs to get it back together here coming up, or else this championship could slip away very, very early on in this season. Casey Kane, he was the Durst Dice Roll driver, 2 top 10s for him on the weekend. He finished 9th. Ryan Timms, 17th to 10th. He's been a little bit quiet so far here in 2024 when the 410s come out, but a solid run for him for $2,500. Jacob Allen was 11th. Hunter Schoenberg, he won the B main and drove up to 12th. He would get the Hard Charger award. And then behind him, Jake Buback, a solid 13th place run for a guy that we do not see on the national scene nearly enough on a big racetrack. He was really, really solid. Had some fun in that heat race earlier on with Kyle Larson, and then had a solid run right there for a $2,200 payday for that team. Good to see for Jake Buback. Tanner Thorson, 23rd to 14th for him. It doesn't sound like the greatest run of all time for Thorson, but considering he is racing with a broken rib, that is pretty darn impressive for him to drive up through the field there and gain 9 positions. I can't imagine what it's like to drive a sprint car at Lakeside. It was a little bit rough that night with a broken rib. So kudos to Tanner Thorson on the 14th place run. Chris Wyndham, Blake Hahn was 16th. Zeb Wise, 17th and 18th, the 2 nights at Lakeside. They've got some work to do on the Rudine Racing car. Parker Price Miller, Joe B. Miller, Ayrton Jeniton, Brian Brown. Spencer Baston, he got upside down after contact with Ryan Timms. It looked like Baston was on his way to another top 10 finish. Unfortunately, ran into, I think, the left rear tire of Ryan Timms going off of turn 4. He did a couple backflips, and he would end up in the trailer. Also, Corey Eliason, he finished 23rd. Definitely not indicative of how he was running that night. He was up around the top 10 and sheared the left rear portion of the axle right off the car, and he was out of the race pretty early on in the main event. And then your final starter or finisher was Sam Hafertepe Jr. So overall, a phenomenal weekend at Lakeside. Both races, 3 different leaders, And both races, the battle for the lead was just crazy between those three cars that were involved on all 3 nights. The track was perfect. I mean, it was around the top in 1 and 2. It was around the bottom in 1 and 2. 3 and 4 had some character on the bottom. If you hit it right, it was fast. If you didn't, you were throwing the front end over, you're popping wheelies, and the top was good as well. And you cannot ask for much better racetrack than what we saw at Lakeside Speedway. Great job by the whole track crew there to get it in with all the rain and everything that happened. It didn't even look like we were going to get this weekend of racing in, but they worked their tails off and put on a great show for the good fans there and for the people watching at home on Flow. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the race. I certainly did, and I think this one's going to get a little bit better of a score just because when you have a good race and the guys are racing for $50,000, it's a big race and it's a good race. I think that bumps up that score just a little bit more. So I'm going to give this one an 85. 85 out of 100 for night 2 at Lakeside Speedway for $50,000 to win. Great race, great job by the drivers, and great job by the track crew and everybody involved over there at Lakeside Speedway and Shane Stewart. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this quick recap. It wasn't really quick. It's pretty long. It's like 20 minutes long, but I'm going to try and fix that later on when we get some magnets and things like that for the race recaps. So let me know down in the comment section below, what would you give it on a score out of 100 for Lakeside Speedway, the 2 nights over there for the Heartland of America Showdown? Let me know. Also hit the subscribe button. We're very close to 1,500 subscribers. And hit the like button. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you back here tomorrow for some power rankings with the drivers with Kubota High Limit Racing. Thank you.